that's the reason I'm trying to raise these conversations, so that we treat cases with a little more care rather than just diving into something and going, my gut feeling is, and I'm sticking with it. Sometimes you need to question your gut feeling. Sometimes the gut feeling that you've got is the very thing that you're hanging the prosecution for. For example, your gut feeling tells you this person's innocent, but the prosecution's gut feeling is the thing that you're angry about because they're trying to prosecute the person. If it's both based on gut feelings, then neither of you is right. And you're just being a hypocrite saying, no, my gut feeling counts and yours don't. The point being, in a court hearing, you need evidence. And that evidence needs to be backed up by corroboration, especially in a highly circumstantial case. The only way you can go about a circumstantial case is having corroboration upon corroboration upon corroboration. And so these are the only things that I've been talking about lately. I have certainly not taken a side on any of the cases except Karen Reid. So in this one, we're getting a little bit closer to the case of that person that shall not be named because it causes arguments between everybody. So let's have a listen to this one.
The couch watching TV when you hear a knock on the door. The police have just arrived to arrest your spouse for murder. This accusation comes as a total shock. In your experience, your partner has always been gentle and loving, and you can't imagine them committing a grisly murder. But the evidence is serious. Their fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. Your spouse insists they're innocent. I know it looks bad, they say, but you have to believe me. If you don't, who will? Should you believe your spouse, even though the evidence against them looks damning? Take a second to think what you would believe in this situation.
Okay, so there's the dilemma. Should you believe your spouse, or what would you believe in this situation? It's kind of two questions, but let's start with should you? Should you always just stick by your spouse because they're your spouse, regardless if there's some evidence that makes them look like they might have done it? Anne says, I'd believe he's probably guilty, but wait for the evidence until I completely gave up on them. I would tell her to stay silent and start calling lawyers. Oh man. I would if I would be inclined to say, if you're guilty, plead guilty. There's nothing like telling the truth. And the other side of telling the truth is generally you're going to get a lot of sentence. If you put up no resistance whatsoever and you don't cost the state tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars in a lengthy court trial, you're generally going to get a lot of sentence. If you done it, you done it. You know what I mean? Like, just tell the truth. That's my theory. Even, with my own kids, as they were growing up, I always told them, I'll stand by you no matter what you done. Even if you did murder someone, I'll still stand by you, but you got to cop to it. You got to say the truth. Always stick to the truth, and I'll always stick by you. Well, it's still lying if you're saying that you didn't do it, even though that's the way the system works. See, this is why we have ethical dilemmas. It is ethical to say, I did it. It doesn't matter if the system is set up so that if there's not enough proof beyond reasonable doubt, you're still being dishonest. If you did it, you did it. Do you get what I'm saying? But this is the ethical dilemma that we're presenting, JC. All right, there's a way out of it because of beyond reasonable doubt. But is it ethical? Is it the right thing to do to just go, oh no, I didn't kill those people, even though you did? It's not the right thing to do. And you need to, if you do the crime, you do the time. That's just how it is. Anne says, I went into the Karen Reid trial thinking she was probably guilty, but the evidence changed my mind fast. Right. I sort of went into it already thinking something's up with this. Something is really up with this. But again, if Karen Reid did it, I would be of the same opinion. I would expect her to be honest and say, yeah, I did it. It doesn't matter if you could possibly get out of it. That's not being an ethical and moral person. That's being unethical and trying to get away with it. Ethicality is different than legality. It sure is. And just because there's a legal way for you to get away with it, does that make it morally right? Just because there's a loophole where you can get away with it, does that mean it's the morally right thing to do? Let's say you're a cop and you're working the beat with another cop and you do a sting, and in the midst of that sting, your partner flogs $1 million off of the drug dealer. Now, it wasn't you that flogged it, so there's a legal loophole that you could get out of it and not have to say anything, and your partner could get away with the $1 million. And who cares, because it's just a drug dealer? Nobody cares. But is it ethical? Is it morally right to just turn a blind eye to that? The reason I gave you a different scenario where it's cops is because this is exactly what we're looking at, and pretty much, all the cases that we're studying right now. We're saying these cops are not telling the truth. They know who killed Officer John O'Keefe, but they're not telling the truth. So, in the moral dilemma I just gave you, if you know the truth, then are you going to fess up? Are you going to tell your superiors that that's what he done? Are you going to be the one that says this is the right thing to do? But it's too late. It's already done. He took the money and you found out about it afterwards. So now you've got to decide whether you're going to tell someone. See, you did it again, JC. You went for another option where you don't have to, like, where you try to stop the crime from happening instead of dealing with the scenario that I gave you. It's the right thing to do to say to your superiors, he stole the money, right? I wonder what impact on society we would witness if honesty and accepting responsibility for a crime was responsibly incentivized. Well, I think it is actually. Well, is it fairly, responsibly and fairly are two different things. What we could think is fair might be very, very different between, every single one of us in the room right now. But responsibly, I think it is responsibly incentivized. I think that you can actually have time knocked off your sentence if you plead guilty early, accept responsibility, regretting what you've done, showing remorse. Thank you. That was the word. Taking accountability and remorse is the other word that I was looking for. Humility, all of these human things that you need to do. If you can do all of those things, then yeah, I would say it probably is responsibly incentivized, but I can't speak for America because I haven't seen a responsibly incentivized case. So I can't speak for America. I can speak for Australia, and I do think that we do have responsibly incentivized schemes, but that doesn't mean that we're, great compared to America. We still have a very high recidivism rate, for example, which is probably up there level with your recidivism rate. So, uh, yeah, I'm not saying we're perfect. I'd say nothing, but I wouldn't have a relationship anymore. Right. Carla says she would believe him. Right. So there are incentivizations for accepting responsibility for what you've done. So, but not many people, like, even that's a dilemma in itself, isn't it? Like, the dilemma is, do I get a less sentence because I admit it and I show remorse and I get the lighter sentence and I've done the right thing? Or do I deny it and I put the state through an expensive, the taxpayers, that is, through an expensive court process and end up with a longer sentence? That's exactly what Sarah Boone weighed up, right? She could have admitted it and she would have got a lighter sentence. In fact, if you added the lighter sentence to the time that she'd already served, I think she was only looking at like 5 years. But she decided to run the gauntlet and not be honest and not show remorse and deny that she did anything, and that and worse still, blame the victim. So now she's got, I think it's up to 22-year sentence. So, even that in itself is a moral dilemma, when you've got to look at, do I admit it and take the rap and do the time, or do I fight it all the way and end up with a bigger sentence? Or perhaps fighting it all the way because you can see that there's a way out, in the beyond reasonable doubt kind of standard, that you're willing to run that gauntlet. So let's now take this into perspective with Richard Allen's wife. Yes, I said his name. Dun dun dun. Sue me. Did she decide to look at the evidence? Just given what we've heard about the phone calls between them, when he was saying, I did it, she was saying, no, you didn't. Was she actually looking at any of the evidence? JC says, I have trust with my spouse. I would admit to her and she would admit to me the truth. What to do next is the hard part. I'm not ratting her out because loyalty is also important. Yep, that's fair enough. And I'll just keep going with the there are no correct or incorrect answers here. This is just a matter of whether you're willing to look at your own viewpoint and pull it apart and question yourself. It's not necessarily anything you need to type publicly into the chat. So please don't feel like you have to, but thank you for participating if you do. I ain't going to judge you if you do. And says, just because you don't believe them doesn't mean you don't get them a good lawyer and protect their right to a fair trial. Well, there's that too, but I that's not the first thing that I would do. I would encourage him to tell the truth. That's my first thing. I would be encouraging them. You probably still need a good lawyer, even if you are going to make a plea of guilty. But I'm still going to tell them to tell the truth. I think telling the truth is always the right answer, regardless whether a good lawyer could get you off. But even a fair trial is not fair if you're telling a lie. If you're going into that knowing full well that you did it, then you're not even starting on fair. You're not starting on a fair footing at all. You're starting on a lie. So it's always best to tell the truth, in my opinion. But what I did notice with the Richard Allen confessions is that he's telling his wife, I did it. She's saying, no, you didn't. He told his mum, I did it. No, you didn't. Every time he tried to tell them that he did it, they weren't going to believe him. And that's why I played that video. I mean, there might be other considerations. I'm not saying there isn't. I just played the video just to show you the ethical boundaries on whether or not you're just automatically going to believe your partner or not. So don't get it all twisted like I'm saying there's not other considerations, because there obviously is. But at the end of the day, you need to tell the truth. And it seems to me like he was trying to tell the truth. He wanted to tell the truth, but his family wouldn't let him. So if he told the truth, they weren't going to love him anymore. That was his major concern. That's obviously all of our major concerns. I, on the other hand, as far as my kids go, I told them I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to try and get you a good lawyer and try and, get you the help that you need. But you need to tell the truth, whatever the truth is. And I can understand why Richard Allen's mum and wife are in denial. I'm sure that we all would be in denial. But at some point, you need to be able to speak openly with your partner and say, I need to know the truth. We all need to know the truth from our partners. If our own partner cannot tell us the truth, then what kind of relationship do you have to begin with? Yeah, but see, that's the problem. What you're hearing through Andrea is through a third person. It's hearsay. You didn't actually hear him say it. There are other people in that courtroom who are just as qualified as Andrea who didn't hear what she heard. They heard a perfectly calm and normal and not panicked and not crazy person admitting to his wife that he done it. So, that's again driven by, as we were talking earlier on, confirmation bias. Andrea says what confirmed you already thought, and so you're going with Andrea. But what about the other people in the courtroom who don't think that that's what they heard? Why don't they count? Because they're not Andrea, or because they don't confirm your bias? So you don't need to answer that. It's just something you need to ask yourself. That's why we're going through these ethical dilemmas today, because it's that point where you've got to be asking yourself these questions. It's not necessarily about me asking you these questions. If you're not prepared to ask these questions of yourself, then I don't think that saying, well, I follow so and so and they said it, is actually conducive to anything except following the leader. Like, that's not your decision. You're not thinking for yourself. When you question yourself, you're thinking for yourself. When you don't question yourself and you just go seek out people who agree with you, that's not doing what we're doing here.